About the container. So I remember that Lotus was talking about containers and how you have to basically hold a space for yourself. And what is it that you picture to be your container? What is it that you imagine when you are thinking about your container? And Lotus, do you want to go in a little bit more about that?
Yes, I would love to actually because this is something that I've been working on for a while because I realized that when I was younger, I didn't really feel safe within my home and I had, nowhere else to really run to except my room. And even when in my room, I felt as though I wasn't safe because, within the home, there's abuse, there's neglect, and all that. So I feel like to pay tribute to my child and teenage self, like I should create that container for myself of safety, security, and just overall just meeting myself with a big hug. So my container consists of basically just making sure I have that outlet for my rage, for my sadness, or just anything that came up when I was feeling abused and neglected.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like your container can be anything that you want it to be. Like for example, you're looking at a teacup and you can imagine this teacup however you want it to be. And you can what is inside of this teacup that you are imagining? It could be coffee, it could be like water, it could be tea, it could be anything that you want it to be. And this is like the representation of your internal self. Like, how do you imagine yourself? What is this safe space for you? What is this like what is it that you are consuming, that you are putting inside your body, that is making you like that makes you perceive your container quotation? Like, for example, some people consume poison and it's like the container is like not how you want it to be, and you don't feel safe in it. And for other people, the container is like their safe haven. It's like the inside of their soul, like what is inside.
Wow, right.
Mm-hmm. Like some people, it's maybe not pleasant. Some people are dealing with a lot of like internal things that kind of manifest on the outside, and that kind of like shows. Like, for example, somebody might have a crack in their teacup,
Mm,
but it's still a beautiful teacup. So
mm-hmm.
that's kind of like a representation of their container. And your container is like a vessel. It's the vessel. It's your vessel.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So uh how do you want to piggyback off of that?
So actually, that actually brought up something.
Mm-hmm.
So this goes into the our next segment of like our inner self.
Ooh. Okay.
So the container in our inner self like goes hand in hand because it's like our inner self isn't our true self,
Mm-hmm.
and when we are like out of our body, let's say with like drugs or through the response and reaction of abuse and trauma, it causes us to have like it causes us to move externally instead of internally. So that's why we see people who seek like seek another home physically somewhere else when they deserve that home within themselves.
Wow.
and
Yeah.
and
Actually, I love what you brought up when you mentioned something about seeking like what you are seeking within on the external. Like you are going outside of yourself to find something to like find holds your space in. And it's like I feel like people go out seeking themselves in external things, but it's like the more that they're looking for themselves, the more that they're losing themselves in those things. And that's why that's the biggest trap, I feel like, because that is like the energetic trap that most people like don't see coming. And it's like they are conditioned to take that step outside of themselves because they were not provided with what they needed to have to feel safe within themselves growing up. So now they're seeking it outside of themselves. Now they are turning to alcohol. They're turning to just different types of vices, anything like that.
Right. Yes.
Escapism.
Yes. Exactly.
Yes. And I feel like it's because they are not seeing their vessel as a sacred space for themselves. Because I feel like it's like more like a trap, a spiritual like trap. I feel like it's like something deeper than physical. It's like it's like on another plane where it's like your purity is snatched away from you, and it's like you go out looking for that. You go out looking for that happiness that wasn't provided for you growing up. And it's like now that's the trap that allows you to kind of get lost inside of like something that's not you. Like you're going out seeking something that should be that you should find within yourself. And I think that's the biggest lesson in life is just finding yourself, finding like solace in your container, which is your vessel, which is your soul.
And you know what you just said brought up for me, like, I think what happens when they or we even become traumatized and not feel safe within our body is when we're introduced to that suffering, like when we get hit, right? It's like that feeling and that experience is like within us now. And I think that's what we're trying to run away from.
Like a tree. And carving into a tree. The carving never goes away. It kind of just like heals over. Right. But it's always there. And it's hard for a lot of people to face. So they're constantly running away from themselves. Constantly running away. And it's like if you don't deal with that, it's going to pop up continuously, constantly, over and over in your life. And you have to make peace with that. And you have to make peace with yourself. And that's hard for a lot of people. Like, that's not an easy task. It may seem like it is, but a lot of people are fighting invisible battles.
Dude, yes. Because I about 5 years ago, I went through something really, really traumatic, and my body and just my spirit could not, I wasn't able to comprehend what just happened to me. And you can relate to this too, because it was a spiritual attack we went through. With our mind, our emotions, our spirit, our body, like,
trust me,
we had no idea how to hold capacity for that, because like what we went through was foreign to us, you know.
And it's like your body is kind of like in jet lag because you don't actually realize that it's happening until after it's already happened.
Right.
So like when you finally when it finally registers in your mind, it's like, wow. Like, damn.
Right,
like it hits you. It falls on you like a bag of bricks.
Yeah, like, damn, I really went through that?
Yeah.
It's like those rose-colored glasses come off, and it's like, whoa.
Yeah. It's like learning to walk all over again.
Oh
Right.
my gosh, yes. Yes. And that's what made me hard on myself was being like, why do I have to start all over? And I wanna be like who I was before, and it's like who I was before invited those demons in.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
So we have
no,
to forgive ourselves for, like, instead of trying to place, like, the blame on other situations outside of our lives, like, we have to go within ourselves. When I'm talking about this container, this is having to find that peace within ourselves, because a lot of people go through things and then they place the blame on everybody else around them, but they're not realizing what they like. People take accountability, and a lot of people can't, and it's really hard for a lot of people to take accountability for the things that they're or have done to themselves. Just, like, I had to realize that like, I woke up one day and I was like, dang, I'm allowing this to happen to me.
mm,
Yes. And it was hard because I wanted to act like the victim.
right.
I wanted to act like, oh, I'm innocent, and, like, everybody else is wrong and blah blah blah, and it's like the whole world is against me, it feels like. But
And that's the easy way out.
it is. And a lot of people fall into that trap and they never grow from it. That's one of those lessons where you have to.
Yeah.
That's one where you will really grow, is when you realize that you start to take accountability for the things that you are putting in your own body, that you are, like, consuming, and the people that you are surrounding yourself with. So it's like, it's really a bigger picture, you know?
Mhm. What's funny about that, like, what made me kind of resist the process of, like, taking accountability and responsibility, and it's for me, it's like I already took on other people's problems. Now I have to take on my own problem and be like, oh, it's not their fault, it's my fault.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, no, how I see it is like, I take on the responsibility of other people's problems, and I'm basically martyring myself because I want to be that person for someone else that I wish I had. And that's kind of like, people feed off of that, and that's kind of like, that's that inner self, like the container I'm speaking of, like,
Yeah.
that's what you are wanting for yourself, so you give it to someone else. And the hard part is realizing that you gave that to the wrong person. And that's, like, kind of like, people are gonna blame you for the things that happen to you, which is not necessarily true. Like, not everybody can control their circumstances, like, all the time. Like, some people don't, they're just not able to, like. But then there are people that can. Like, people don't control what others do, we can only control what we do.
Right.
So that's, like, kind of like a hard space, because I feel like that's kind of like a form of self-soothing for some people, to compensate for what they didn't have and what they wish they would have, so they try to embody that.
That was a
And
good one.
and they want to, like, receive that, but they're constantly pouring into other cups and not being poured back into. And it's like, you have to realize when you are, like, You're literally giving yourself away. Some people, like, you're giving yourself away and people aren't appreciating it because they're like, oh, I'll take that. And then they're not even thinking about, like, they're not sorry. People are not sorry for taking from your container, and filling their own container up. So that was another thing, is like, not everybody has the same heart, and that was a hard lesson for a lot of people, including myself, you know?
Right.
So with that container, like, some people, they don't, like, the container is empty. For some people, the container is full. Some people, the container is at like 10%, like a battery. So yeah.
Yeah.
And we constantly gotta charge.
One thing that
A battery is a container too.
Yeah, itself, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's full of energy, just as we are.
Yeah. And energy is like money is the manifestation of energy, like the physical manifestation.
Yeah, in this reality.
Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking about this container. It's like a room that is inside your mind that you are constantly, like, this is your room, right? Like picture this. You're in your room inside your mind. How do you picture that to be? Like, for some people it's very scary, and for some people it's like, like everybody has a room inside their head. Like, that's their conscience. That's like, your brain is like the container for your mind. Your body is the container for your soul. And then you have like this inner, like, thing that contains your soul, that contains your mind. So what is that for? Is there any type of like room that you have in mind? Like, what does your room look like? For me, it's like really comfy, and like, man, I'd just be so excited to just hop on the couch in my mind, like take a seat back and just try to make things beautiful. And like, for me, it's like, how houses are engineered to satisfy the inner needs of a human. Like, for example, we have red and white blood cells, and that's like the red and white that's on the traffic, like the highways. You see in the red and the white, and the highways are like veins. And it's like constantly moving. There's constantly a flow, just like how in your body there's constantly a flow of those red and white blood cells. And that's like a physical manifestation of a part of us, like internally. For example. And cars are like the vessel that gets us from point A to point B, just like how blood cells are getting from point A to point B. I don't know if you know what I mean, but it's everything is a container. Like, everything holds something, and like, we're all holding like our spirit within our bodies, within our vessel. So I really do think there's planes to this. It's like the third dimension and the fifth dimension and like the second dimension, and it's all stacked on top of each other. So there's a physical version, and there's a spiritual side, and there's like the actual like dimensions of us, and we're all overlapped to create like the actual whole thing. I don't know how to explain it. It's like layers to everything.
I know what you're talking about, because I have seen this video where they were doing like this sound frequency thing, and it was layers to a portrait of a baby, and when they put each layer on top, it could just complete it into physical like representation of the baby,
Mhm.
and it was beautiful. I was like, whoa, like this is crazy.
Yeah, it's like a sandwich with all the layers
Yeah.
in it. You got the lettuce, the tomatoes, and the buns, and then that just makes the whole salad, you know?
Yes.
I mean, I said salad, but you know what I mean.